Good morning.
Good morning, sir. This is episode 105.
105, I think.
Yeah, it's February of 2024. We're going to hit just an interesting development in the way in which I process new information.
Okay, I like that.
But before we start,
I'm Jonathan Noel.
and I'm Brian Noel,
This is the Focus Cast.
where we help you reduce distractions
Increase focus.
so you can live a life with
Intentions.
intention. Be intentional.
Be intentional with your intentions.
Yeah,
What if you have unintentional intentions?
that's our subconscious, and I think that drives the majority of most people's life.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so we'll just jump right in. Why not?
Yeah.
Because then we're meeting someone for lunch. Okay. In articulating how I approach new information now versus, say, a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the why that's significant is because I've been intentional about learning how to, I don't even know how to articulate it, but just being more grounded.
Yeah.
That's been the goal.
A little context, you had dissociation for
Yeah,
most of your life.
most of my life.
Whatever.
So I started for some of our followers who listen to everything. You know this, but in quick summary, I started therapy just because I wanted to clear mind and I wanted to remember some of my childhood.
Yeah. You had a big gap where you didn't remember anything.
Yeah, and then that was, typical therapy. EMDR, doing some stuff, breaking new territory, clearing trauma, peeling the onion,
Right.
and then it got to the core,
Right.
and then it started getting crazy.
Then you start looking at how you do everything differently.
Yeah. Then we'll use some different
The next phase of work starts.
different phrasing for different people and different belief systems. False self, true self. I broke past the default network. I broke past the ego. Access to the soul beyond just the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Insert.
Yeah.
What I realize is most of everything is all talking about the same thing,
Yeah.
the same feeling.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and if there's one thing that I have learned in all of this work is that getting all flustered about you using the right term or the wrong term, I don't do that anymore.
well, isn't that something? Isn't that great?
Yeah, I mean, language is not an absolute.
No.
Language is just the way in which we try to describe
Yep.
what is going on in this
And a lot of us are
world.
feeling the same thing, just explaining it in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, cool. So here's the situation, or here's the scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So the very specific work is reprogramming.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about inner narrative. We've talked about inner critic.
Yep.
We've talked about
The manager.
the manager in the internal family systems
Mm-hmm.
and how the manager tells you what to do every day. We've talked about introspective work. So we've talked around this.
Mm-hmm.
But the past 2.5 months, really since November, since I broke through the surface, or got to some of the core, is reprogramming.
Yeah.
So for me, some of the programs, some of the scripts, I talked about this, I think in episode 101, but, you're cursed,
Yeah.
you're a failure,
Yep.
all those kind of programs that are subconscious, right?
Right. Yeah.
I wasn't like a depressed, sad person that every time you talked to me, I was just like, oh, I'm just a loser. It was more like I'm a very optimistic person, but deep inside, I didn't believe it.
Right.
Because there was a program running in my subconscious that I was cursed. So now it's reprogramming. And what's interesting from the delineation between just pure cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, change your behavior and then you'll slowly, versus what I feel like I've been doing, which is radical, deep soul work, right? So I don't feel like I'm just working in the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, the thinking brain,
Yeah.
or the processing emotional brain.
You moved on to
It feels like
the
whole
whole
being
package.
work.
Yeah.
Now again, that just may be what it feels like. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying that's wrong or whatever. I'm not picking a side here, but that's what it feels like to me. It feels like moving out of the brain. So in reprogramming, also the work to this concept of radical non-judgment, which we talked about. So the negative programs and the negative judgment, self-judgment, definitely control a lot of our thinking energy as human beings.
Yeah, most definitely.
So what's been fun about the work is to start to pull apart the emotional response to the environment, and then to be able to run a new program free from judgment. Here's an example. So in being an entrepreneur, there's ups, there's downs, there's just, it's just par for the course, right?
Yeah.
And what's been really interesting is in the past couple of months, in this, as I've been kind of catapulted because of a session I did on November 11th, I've been kind of catapulted into this like intense, introspective work to challenge my entire default network. Right?
Yeah.
Which is everything I know to be true, my default network.
Yeah.
Does, like just these things. Like default network is like you can drive and think about something else at the same time. It's as simple as that, but it's as complex as like if you grew up where you had a mom who got stressed out every holiday because everything had to be perfect, but she made it not perfect because she was so stressed out and just yelled at everyone. Your default network is that's the way holidays go.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. That's just you. That's all you've seen.
Yeah.
That's what you know.
So you have to reprogram
Yeah.
that,
Holidays aren't.
perfection doesn't make joy.
Yeah.
And the purpose of a holiday is joy.
Right.
So letting go. So anyway, so before, I've tried things as an entrepreneur my whole life. Since we had a recording studio and I was in middle school. So I'm familiar with things working and things not working.
Yeah. That's nothing new there.
Yeah, nothing new there. So in the past, the program that would run when I hit a roadblock or something came up the program would run that I told you so.
Yeah.
You're a failure.
This was never going to work.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. What were you thinking?
All that.
Yeah. The usual suspects.
So this is the first time in the history of my life that I know of where in navigating these just typical things, when I was hit with information, the negative program didn't run at all.
You just kind of zoomed out and looked at it.
It's pretty interesting. What I could see was clear separation between the emotional response and the programs, the scripts running to analyze the emotional response. So what I saw for the first time was a clear delineation and detachment from the emotional response to the situation, and then what program I was able to apply to the emotion in response to the external event. So I didn't experience a flash of emotion and then the script told me what it was. I got to literally experience the emotion and then with my logical brain, ask myself, I guess my subconscious, I don't really know. Maybe I should talk to a psychiatrist or someone, a neurologist. But my thinking brain got to literally talk to the subconscious and say, what program are we going to run in response to this to apply to this emotional response to this situation. Is that not insane?
That's pretty amazing.
So then the thinking brain, I was able to say, it's okay to feel disappointed.
Yeah.
Completely free from judgment.
Right. That's way different than feeling like a failure and everything you do is cursed.
Yeah. I was literally able to say, I feel disappointed. And it's okay to feel disappointed.
Yeah.
It's okay to be cautious or now a bit curious or nervous about, okay, cool, well, what's next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And instead of, it's like, well, if it's okay to feel that way. I have a family, I have kids, I want to provide for them. I want to do all these things as a man and as a human. But instead of that, like typical, like, you're not going to be able to provide for your family. Your family's going to think you're, all that stuff. For me, letting down my family was one of the core fears.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, in a therapy session, visualized sitting at the table, having to tell my family that I'm a failure and them realizing it.
You did that in a session?
Yeah, and that was like, that's just what came up, and that produced one of the core fears.
Yeah. I think this one's pretty common.
Yeah.
Because I have some too.
Yeah.
It's like not wanting to fail anyone that you care about.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Which, if you go to the bottom of that, I think that just ends at you don't want to fail the creator.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you have a construed version of the creator and...
Yeah. Doesn't matter. The point is it still sucks.
Yeah.
When you feel like you failed, even if you didn't.
Yeah.
So that's a default, whatever, program, script, or program, script, whatever the hell you name, whatever name, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it to work through.
Yeah. We should start creating new words. So that way people are like, what does that word mean? And then we just give it a meaning. But yeah, so it was actually, and all this is pretty recent for me. So it's been really interesting to actually be able to work through this in this way. Mm-hmm. To be able to, it's almost like now that because y'all have heard me say this before, Jonathan, you mentioned this before. So for me in therapy, I'm not just going to therapy and about life.
Right.
I prepare for what I want to get out of that session. This is the way I approach any whether it's a business mentor, whether it's my freaking CPA.
You're squeezing as much out of it as you can.
Absolutely. Prepare for the meeting.
Go in.
Super intentional in the meeting, focused, and then process after the meeting.
Write notes afterwards.
Yeah.
And then we talk about it on here.
Yeah. And
it's
think
like,
about it and
it's like
reflect on it.
4 therapy sessions in one.
And then anything that comes up, I read books about it.
Yeah.
So I've been extremely intentional. So the process for me, right? And,
Yeah.
And everyone's probably a little different. Obviously, there's probably some commonalities, but the process for me. So I've ran these reps of here's how my brain works.
You're understanding the mechanism more.
Yes.
And when in understanding the mechanism, you can thwart some of the default reactions.
Yeah, and I can go through the process of, quote, therapy in my head on my own.
Yeah.
When something comes up, now it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to call my therapist and she's got to work through this with me. Right? I don't.
You have tools.
Yeah, I have tools.
Yeah.
I was able to sit down and say, well, first thing I was able to do, which now this is like the steps in receiving information, apply them to yourself if you want, was first I was able to just say, oh, I'm not going to logically start trying to analyze this. I'm just going to give it 24 hours and just facts are facts. Let me emotionally respond to it and personally.
Yeah.
Let me just see what.
Instead of doing a reactionary email immediately.
Exactly.
How could you possibly?
Yeah, any of that.
Why is this going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first it's just like, okay, noted. And you don't avoid either, right?
Right.
It's like, someone doesn't text you for a week. So just reply and say, great, I'm going to think about this for a day, and then we'll figure it out. So then for me personally, that's giving myself a day to not jump into decision-making, a decision-making stance, just to kind of allow myself. And then feeling, what's been really cool is just feeling the emotions in the body, and then the mind going, okay, cool, what program are we going to use to analyze these emotions? And then instead of grabbing the old programs, which are just to apply a bunch of negativity to it, apply the new programs, which is, okay, cool, what's the word attached to the feeling? What age do you feel? Which I love it with my therapy. My therapist asked that question. I'm like, I feel this. And she's like, how old are you?
Yeah, what age do you feel this?
Yeah.
I've never done that.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, then you'll go to that age. You'll go to a memory of being that. So then I'm like, okay, cool. What does that age feel like? 5, 12, whatever. Or now, And then it's like, okay, cool. What is it? Disappointment, frustration, fear, whatever, those core things. Fear against your basic need, safety, provision, shelter. Fear against, or frustration against our second need or whatever need, which is our ego, desire to be respected, all that kind of stuff. And then say, okay, cool. And then not judge it, but to accept it. It's okay to feel that way. Process through it. Kind of, for me so far, it's been spend some time in that space. It's okay. Just kind of it's okay. Reinforcing that.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay to feel that way. Go to sleep. Wake up. It's okay to feel that way. And then what I found myself next is, well, how does this relate to me personally? How does it relate to now? And how does it relate to what I really want to give this world that I feel like I have? So this morning I was in my head dropping Gus off at school, and I was just like, as a visionary, my mind goes to these details, and I quickly end up in these, this is what this could be, right? Not like pie in the sky, but like, me, like all of the mechanics associated with it. So when I came to a place to truly articulate the emotion for me personally is in this concept of immaterial.
In the physical?
Like understanding that the physical is, quantum physics suggests there is no hard matter. Everything is frequency. Everything is waves.
Yeah.
Everything actually is movement. So if we look beyond just the material, and for me asking in the concept of this whole construct, I have in my mind created what seems to be something that could be really special. And it's not just any particular thing, it's the way my brain works, right? And I think a lot of us, because a lot of us are creative, we see what could be, right? Whether that's we see what our kids could be, we see what our friends, we see what we could do, right? That's just kind of how we operate.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it was like, well, what do I do with that now? Where does that go?
Seeing the potential.
Yeah. So I think for me, what I found and discovered as of this morning is the negative pain is I feel like I can contribute more value to the world that I'm currently giving.
Yeah. It's not enough.
Right. And I feel like when some of these things come up, or even in our podcast, sometimes it's like, I feel like we're being so transparent and honest and just loosely sharing our
Truths.
and transformation. And sometimes, and again, negative, positive, whatever, sometimes I'm like, wouldn't that benefit more people than the 15 or 20 people that download the podcast? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it just really falls back to, is this giving us value? And if it is, we'll keep doing it. And if it's not, we'll stop.
Yeah.
Because that's all we can control.
Yeah.
But the letdown for me, as I was able to articulate it this morning, was I feel like I have more to give that is being received of the entire construct of the life that I live. Now, whether that's true or not, it doesn't matter. Because right now, I'm just able to articulate why I'm not let down, but what's the word? Disappointed.
Disappointed.
So now, today, tomorrow, I'll figure out what to do with that. But that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So what's funny and what's great about all this is in this introspective, it has nothing to do with anyone or anything externally. This is all me processing, allowing an external material,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this makes sense to us. I don't know if it does to the listener because we're, going through this whole material world, spiritual world thing. But like quantum physics thing, I'm just throwing out some words out there. So if any of them are sticky for you in listening to this, but it has nothing to do with the material. It has absolutely nothing. What's cool about the process
It's realizing it's all internal.
and doing the introspective work is I can take any circumstance and apply it to how I want to grow as an individual.
You're taking your power back.
Yeah. Because regardless of what's happened externally, whether
Right,
this business, this thing, this project, whether it's the podcast, whether it's a project with someone,
You are not an effect of outside circumstances.
in this moment, I'll say,
You are less of effect.
I'm choosing to take a particular external event
Right.
and using that event to evoke the emotions, to process the emotions, to use that as a moment to better understand myself.
Right. Instead of completely reactionary.
Yeah, or completely staying in the material. Well, what should I do? What are we going to do? What's the next iteration? What's the next phase? You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I don't really know. But that's what I'm choosing to do right now. Because obviously there still is the material. There still is the thing. But there's, for me, I'm an entrepreneur. I got a lot of ideas. There's always going to be a thing.
Always. Always, always, always.
And as I'm really sinking into this idea of curious and creative with no boundaries for the rest of my life,
Then there's even more.
then there's even more.
Then it never ends.
Yeah. So that's how
I like it. We were talking about this yesterday, but it's a little bit of, my teacher calls it the analyzer. But it's a little bit of stepping out of the analyzer so much. Because your brain,
right.
the analyzer has baggage. It's easy to be scripted and programmed.
Yeah.
And you have the amygdala with the fear response.
Yeah.
And so it's moving out of that and going more into the intuition-based type living. Not saying that's easy.
Yeah. It's the goal, right? At least we got a goal.
But yeah, and even understanding that there's a difference
Yeah.
in this whole thing. Because the brain, I'm not ripping on the brain,
Yeah.
but it has some things that make it irritating sometimes. Like the amygdala, the flight or flight, all this that just makes you sit there and worry incessantly about, is it going to work? What should I do next? How is this going to yada, yada, yada.
And
then when you breathe, the right way, and you slip out of that into the parasympathetic nerve, and then all that melts away.
Yeah.
And then you start to operate from a more calm state, and you're not completely stuck in the analyzer.
Yeah.
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you just do overnight. Like, hey, I'm done with the analyzer. So anyway,
Yeah.
stepping into that a little bit. But yeah.
Well, it's a good point. We were talking yesterday, and I learned this from another expert and a very different methodology that I went to this week. It was pretty cool. But she said a phrase, and I was just like, it just punched me in the face because it was so good. She's like, well, yeah, the subconscious doesn't even see the world. It's inside the brain. Like, it's inside the, like, it's unaware of time. Time doesn't exist to the subconscious. There's no such thing as time. And that's why you can fear a terrorist attack and have the anxiety right now in the moment as if that terrorist attack is happening.
Yeah. If your neighbor's house got broken into and you imagine someone breaking into your house while you're lying in bed at night, your heart rate goes up.
Yeah.
You know,
Your brain
You're not
literally thinks someone is breaking in.
you're not running.
Yeah.
You're just laying in bed.
Yeah.
How does a physiological response like that happen?
Which is crazy.
And your adrenaline spikes. I've done it. We've all sat there and thought about, you're camping, you think about the
murderer.
The murderer in
stabs
the woods.
Me through the tent 20 times
or
before I realize what's going on.
Bigfoot or whatever your thing is that you think about when you.
No, just the serial killer.
And
He's definitely white.
Of course.
Most serial killers are. But yeah, so to your point, the analyzer is attached to that amygdala.
Yeah.
So then the second you start analyzing all of the...
Then your subconscious doesn't know time or space like that. For all it knows, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
So it feels real.
And then bam, fear state.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But also irritating. Well, it's something to understand.
Yeah. And the first step, like you said, the first step is just even acknowledging it. And I feel like for me as a 41-year-old, after 13, 14 months of intense work for the first time ever, I was able to, I didn't pick them apart. They were apart. And then I was able to, with intuition, with, I don't know what, not the fear state.
Yeah.
I was able to, the emotions were over here, and the ability to choose what program I was going to run to process the emotions. I literally, it was like 3 different components were happening in my whole being. The emotions, which came from the body, the gut, and the chest. And then my logical brain was literally said, what program do you want to run? Literally said that. And then I got to pick the program, and then I got to apply the program to the emotions. And after 41 years of living, breathing in this lifetime, and 14 months of, and I'm on session 39 of therapy. I've done EMDR sessions. I've done psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. I've done breath work. I've done some neurological work. After all that,
Yeah.
I was able to, and I didn't try to do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like
That wasn't the goal for the week.
Yeah, I didn't get news and been like, okay, cool. Okay. This is how I'm going to do this. It was literally just like, that's how it operated.
Yeah.
Which was, I even, as it was happening, I was just like, oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you, self. Like, this is cool. It was good acknowledgement too for all the work,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because if you do all this and then all of a sudden something happens and you're just in a fear state and you think you're a piece of and you're worthless, it's just like,
Well, then what was it? What have I been doing?
what am I doing? What am I doing with myself? You know?
Oh, what have I been doing for 14 months? But
Yeah, it's a lot of
that's
money.
funny.
So anyway,
So yeah, that's great, bro.
yeah, it's cool.
I'm also not in the way you described it, but intentionally trying to operate less from the analyzer,
Yeah,
as I call it,
yeah,
the brain, because you can get stuck in those loops
yeah,
of the FUD. I call it FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the
Yeah.
FUD loops. So operating less from the brain and more from wholeness, beingness, ground, whatever your term is.
yeah,
Soul, spirit, I don't really care. I don't like to get bogged down with syntax.
yeah,
I don't see the point.
Yeah.
We're all trying to do the same shit, right?
yeah.
So
I think by far the majority of human beings don't want to live in a fear state where they feel like they're going to die at any
right.
moment.
Do you want more options or do you want less options?
Yeah,
Do you want to feel more freedom or less freedom?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We're all trying to do the same thing here.
Yeah.
You know, everyone wants love.
Yeah.
Unconditional. Everyone wants to feel like they have an option.
Yeah.
More options.
Yeah.
And less constraints.
Boom.
Okay. So yeah, less trying to get out of the brain as much and get into the.
Yeah, if you're stuck on what term to use to get out of the analyzer, you might be operating within the analyzer.
Well, and that's a program, because I mean, same thing with when people talk about all paths end up pretty much leading to the same place. Like, you can see like scientists, they become like they believe in God after 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And you're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And then people who were whatever, maybe they worked in a hospice.
Yeah.
And, but you're just doing something intentionally for years and years. You can kind of notice that a lot of times people end up towards a similar conclusion.
Yeah.
So is there a wrong or right path?
I mean, considering there's infinite possibilities.
How could there only be one path?
Yeah.
I don't know. So anyway.
And how someone arrives
That's
at
more of a
healing.
So, but yeah.
I mean, it's tragic. Oh, I was watching this show last night, and the kid, it's really weird because one of the main characters, his name is Gus, and he's nonverbal. I didn't watch it because of that. I just thought that was pretty strange. They say you start seeing more patterns.
You seeing some patterns?
I'm seeing some patterns.
I'll tell you what pattern I'm seeing. I see more Forerunners on the road now that I own one.
You know what pattern? Next episode, we're going to talk about manifestation, because I actually love that subject.
Yeah.
And I love being cheeky about the subject too. So, but you know what I want to quote manifest?
What you manifesting, bro?
Once we get the runners wrapped and we keep developing engaging content on Forerunner Gunner, all those Forerunners are like, we get the Forerunner Gunner wave. That's what I'm saying.
Have you been doing it to others?
No, I guess I got to start. Good challenge. I just feel like motorcycle culture is cool.
That they all wave at each other?
Yeah, that's cool.
They have an understanding.
They do.
So then the Forerunner culture,
Yeah.
Toyota.
But then there's Jeep culture, and Jeeps wave at each other. But I think the Forerunner culture doesn't wave at each other despite, what's the word?
And
Yeah, whatever that word is. Because Jeep culture does that. So I think Foreigners don't do
because
it.
they're too cool.
They're too cool. But I don't know. I'm still new to the whole like being snobby in a subculture, because I've always blended subcultures in my whole life.
Yeah, the whole Jeep and Toyota thing's pretty funny.
Yeah. But I got to be honest with you. I really want to ask this question.
What's that? To me?
What is the point of the ducks?
I don't know. I haven't understood that yet.
Because it seems kind of, and maybe this is me being a snobby Toyota guy, it seems kind of
cheesy.
Yeah, that's a nice word.
That's the nicest way you can put it right now on this episode.
But maybe I just don't understand it.
I don't know. We should figure out where it started. How did it start? What does it represent? What is the point?
We'll look that up. Anyway, in conclusion, this morning I asked myself, I was like, I'm starting to see some clarity on what I would like to pursue pretty heavy.
Yeah.
I'm taking action to do it. In this life, I think when we talked about purpose, it's funny, I brought up a point, but I didn't conclude the main point. I went back and listened to the episode, and I was like, man, I went on a rant, and I didn't even conclude the rant, so it just sounded like a stupid rant. But we were talking about purpose, and I believe that there's no one thing that you're supposed to do in this world, and you better find it, or you waste your life.
Yeah, of course not.
I don't believe that. And I brought up the analogy of a girlfriend, it's like, or a wife, or a significant other. I was like, I don't think there's one soulmate in this world. But I failed to tie that back to purpose. So I don't think there's one soulmate in this world out of 8 billion people, and you got to go find that person. Or
Right.
The rest of your life is going to be miserable. I don't think there's one thing. I think, to your point, there's options. Once we understand who we are, we can do whatever, right? As
Right.
long as we reflect unconditional love and gratitude.
Yeah, this is stepping into more of the why you're doing it than the what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's like, you want to help people? Cool. There's a billion ways,
Yeah.
Find one that you like. There's probably 1,000 ways you like doing it.
Yeah. And being creative.
Yeah.
You want to be creative? There's a million ways to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to see that, but so as I kind of go through this process over the past year, when I sold out of the last company, I just started doing stuff, a lot of stuff, because that's natural for me.
Yeah.
So now, really, the transition that I'll say, been forced to go through, but I allowed myself to be forced to go through,
Yeah.
is now, to your point, why am I doing all these things?
Yeah. Stepping into the why. And when you really ask yourself that, a lot changed, right?
Everything has changed. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. So what's cool is now seeing that the material world, driven by the material world, going and doing a ton of internal work and then coming back to the material world. And it may look the same, but my presence and groundedness and my point of view
Yeah, your viewpoint changed.
is absolutely radically different. So as I now look at, okay, cool, what do I want to do? It's not out of a program of I need to prove my value, I need them to see my value, all that kind of stuff. It's just more like, what do I want to do? Like, it's just that simple. And then what within this time period of this world and the tools we have and the resources we have, what's that going to look like? But anyway, so yeah. Cool.
I think
That's it.
that's it.
That's all I got.
I like it. Higher viewpoints and less analyzing and more intuition.
Yeah. And just keep doing the work. For me, it's just keep doing the work. Just getting started.
Yeah. I think as much as you can accomplish in life, it's pretty heavily determined on how much you're willing to work on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. If the ability to be curious and creative are absolutely endless and has no bounds.
Yeah.
For me, my motivation is to keep doing the inner work.
Yeah.
So I can
See the possibilities more clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if there's one thing that FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt do, is it narrows your ability to see the possibilities.
Yeah.
It gives you that tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like you have less options. It's a terrible feeling.
Yeah.
So I'd like to reduce that as much as possible.
Yeah. That's good.
So there we go.
Anything else?